Welcome to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I'm your host, Morgan Klein, co-founder and CEO, along with my husband and company visionary, Devin Klein.
And together, with our amazing team, we are going to help you push past your limits, not just physically in our gyms, but right here, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on the Burn Bootcamp podcast.
Together, we will take on challenges and break through barriers to transform into the best possible version of ourselves. We are more than a gym. We are a community. Your community. Let's go, Burn Nation.
What is up, Burn Nation? Welcome back to the Burn Bootcamp podcast. I am Devin Klein, and I am one of your hosts here on the Burn Bootcamp podcast. Today, this is an Ask DK Anything episode. All right, and it is March 10th, and we have 3 pressing questions from Burn Nation's most curious members. Joy from Westmont, Illinois asks today, what are your go-to strategies for overcoming mental burnout? I really like that question, Joy. We'll dive into that for sure. Danielle from Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Do you see a connection between physical fitness and spiritual growth? Ooh, Danielle, you speak my language. She asks, if so, how so? And last but not least, Parker from Ankeny, Iowa. She asks, do you think there is such thing as too much fitness, and where would you draw the line? Okay, everybody. Well, nice little set of questions here on this episode. If you would like to ask your question, podcast at burnbootcamp.com, and we will cover potentially your question here on the show. We're going to start with Joy from Westmont, Illinois, and she asked, what are your go-to strategies for overcoming mental burnout? All right, who before has had burnout? And if you're not raising your hand, my question is, what else are you lying about? Because we've all had some type of burnout before, and you know, it's an interesting word though, and we're going to break down what all this means, okay? So I think everyone has had some level, like I said, of burnout in the past, meaning another way to say that is like no one likes 100% of the job that they do on a daily basis. You know, like think about that, like that's perfection. And we all know that perfection is a fool's errand. And so if we're fortunate enough to maybe like 80% of what we do, 85% of what we do, I think you've struck absolute gold as long as you're passionate about what you're waking up and doing every day. It's like sometimes I'll use the metaphor of, I don't know, maybe like Matthew McConaughey waking up on the set of a movie and being like, it's hot in my trailer and I don't want to film this scene today. It's like, yeah, simultaneously you're also Matthew McConaughey filming a movie on a movie set for a living. So even the most, societally like successful people still have an element about what they do that they don't necessarily like, okay? And so, I think there's really something to be said about that, okay? So don't just skim over that. Do you like 80% of what you do? Okay, if not, then there's some room for questioning. But here's what I will say. I will say that overcoming mental burnout is very easy as long as you have a set of values that guide your thinking, okay? So a lot of times when I, might experience a little bit of discomfort or maybe like some burnout or some exhaustion, or there's a lot of different ways to talk about it. I would say exhaustion is the best synonym for burnout in my world, because I am in love with what I'm doing. I would wake up, even if I wasn't paid for it, I'd wake up every day and I would do it as long as I could pay like my bills and have a roof over my head and food on the table for my family. The success of our company was definitely a byproduct of the care for individuals. So I chose a profession in which I love 80% of what I'm doing. Okay, so when my mind does inevitably race, then even though I am in love with what I'm doing, your mind still is going to race. You're still going to have times when you don't like the other 20%. What do you do? All right. Well, then you have some tools. For me, there's 3 tools. Number 1 is a workout. If I'm feeling like I'm starting to feel bad for myself unnecessarily or have like a pity party, then I'll just go work out. I'm just going to go work out, take my mind. Usually when it's, my mind racing, it's just me feeling sorry for myself and I'm just in my own head having a pity party and I just need to go work out and do something, take my mind off it. 90% of the time that helps. Meditation is the next line of defense for me. And this will be like if I'm still thinking about something and a workout has gone by and a day has gone by, which is very rare, then I'll have to meditate it away, which is like usually 30 minutes of just sitting down and just letting this thought just to have its space and just let it be and not try to not think about it. Almost let it reconcile itself. And then finally, reading a book, because that takes you like into a completely different world. So work out, meditate, read a book. Those are like the tactical strategies. But I feel like before you even can have those tactical strategies, you got to put yourself in a position where mental burnout, where exhaustion is the least likely outcome. And I think the least likely outcome happens when you have your core values aligned, meaning that the virtues that you have as a human being, they're sound virtues. You've got 3 or 5 of them that really guide your life, and that you're constantly taking an audit of what your values are and are you living by them. Because a lot of times when we're not congruent with ourselves is when we get this burnout, or like we are living the lifestyle or blueprint of somebody else and we're not actually living the life that we would want to live. Meaning like I took a job that, my parents might have wanted me to be a doctor and go do this residency, but now I'm in the middle of this residency and I'm absolutely miserable. Well, it's because it's never what I wanted. It's always what they wanted. Okay, and so you've got to live life by your values. And this is a very difficult conversation, especially from those that come from a pretty good family, because you are then handed these principles down and you have to actually question your family. You've got to question the people that you love, and you have to do this. It's not optional. The non-optionality is you have to question it. And so like you could come up with the same answer that, your family values are sound and that they're actually what you believe in, but that's a big question. Like, do you actually believe in the values that your family has passed down to you? And so I think luckily for me, I didn't have a set of values that were bestowed upon me by the lineage before me. It was just something that I was a clean slate. I got to just make them up. There was no Klein family values. So my question for you is, do you have a set of values in which you live by? And if you do not, then it's very important that you do, and you need to make them. Because if you don't have a guiding light to your life, if you don't know where the North Star is, how are you going to possibly navigate? And all the values are in your life is north, south, east, and west. It's just directional. It's directive. It's a mandate for you as a person. When shit hits the fan, when you come at a crossroads of a decision, how are you going to make that decision? Values are only important a few times in our lives, but they're the most important times for us. Like, do we go this way or do we go this way? Turning left is existential when turning right is leading toward the path of righteousness. So there was a time when I didn't have any family values, and I wanted to maybe discuss those with you because I've also gone through a journey of my own, and the 5 family values that I've instilled, Morgan and myself have agreed upon and instilled in our family, hopefully are inspiration for you to be able to agree and instill upon values in your family. So here's what I'll ask you. Here's a very, very important question for you and your family. If you're trying to move forward in life, if you're trying to go from here and you're trying to get to here, all right, it's very important that you have a set of guiding principles and guiding values that are going to help you say yes to things and no to things on the way there. So my question for you is, what are your family values? They can't just be tribal knowledge. They can't just be in somebody's head. They have to be on paper, on a scroll, on a piece of paper, written down per minute. Okay, so that you and your family can rehearse and recite and know these things. I'll tell you the 4 we started with, and then I'll tell you the 5th one in which we add. We started with the following: love, lead, learn, grow. Those are the things that I really wanted to instill into my kids, that all things are made great through love. All healing is done through the power of forgiveness, of respect, and of love. And all love all the time. Love thy enemy, love thy neighbor, love thyself. It's a leading trait. If you see the world through the perspective of love, well, then it's not that you're looking away from evil. It's that you're much more equipped to combat it. Number 2 is lead. That leadership is a choice. It's not a title, that you're able to raise your hand and be a leader because, and only because, you are exuding the actions of a leader. Number 3 is learn. That means every day we wake up and we realize that there's a lot to learn, that we don't know much. That even if we are experts at anything, in which we rarely could call ourselves an expert at anything, and even if we are, that's 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of knowledge, which makes us know nothing, which inherently creates humility as a virtue. And now I understand that I don't know much, and there's humility there. And also, the smartest people I've ever met admittedly know nothing. So learning and realizing how much there is to learn is a very important part of our Klein family values. And then grow, right? Grow, seeking growth mindset. Really, this is like, what's your attitude? It could be a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. A growth mindset is positive and optimistic and always looks for the best in humanity. And a fixed mindset, which would be the antithesis of growth mindset, would mean that you're always looking for negativity, that you're always looking for what could be wrong or what's stopping you or why we can't do something. And I want to know how we can. How can we move forward? What solve is there? Not is there a solve? Okay? And then, there's a 5th one that I was going through life, and I got to one of these times, Joy, where I was kind of in this place where I would call it exhaustion. You called it burnout. And I was sitting back, and I'd worked out, and that didn't work. My mind was still racing. I meditated, and that didn't work out. And then so I got to this point where I started reading a book, and I started reading Meditations. You guys know Meditations is one of my favorite books, Marcus Aurelius' book. And I realized through one of the passages in there that he was talking just about the art of being playful and not taking life so serious. And listen, I'm a very serious guy. I naturally have this like playful element about me, but I was like, I groomed my personality to be so serious to overshadow that playful element because of the despair that I come from, the background that I come from, and just like the complexity and seriousness of that. Like, it doesn't like naturally lend itself to being like a playful human. It's like when you've seen some of the things that I've seen can kind of knock the playfulness out of you. And I found that when I was being so serious and I was living in the perspective of this like 14 to 16-year-old kid who couldn't be playful because playfulness would get punished, that I would show up in this world as this like poor 14 or 16-year-old kid that wasn't having so much fun in a environment in which fun was around me all the time. I mean, our business is so much fun to be a part of. It's such a cool thing. I mean, our company itself, I mean, we just did a month of protein wars, for example, and the amount of creativity that went into our trainers and our locations out there telling you guys, what protein flavor was better, chocolate or vanilla, and all the I mean, how playful and how fun it is to be a part of that. And I could just easily miss that by being so worried about all the things that are going wrong and all the issues, because it's a big company and we have issues. And I'm definitely not overshadowing the seriousness of the issues with the notion to be playful. But what I have found is when I added number 5, the word play, so the Klein family values went from love, lead, learn, grow to love, lead, learn, grow, play. And I added play to it. Wow. I just realized how quickly my kids would grab onto that philosophy. And now that it was a part of my everyday awareness, how much better life is when we're just playful, and how it doesn't have to take away from a serious attitude. I like to clown around, but I'm one serious dude as well, and I can be both of those things. You can be fun and serious. You can get results and have fun doing it at the same time. Okay. So there's my 2 cents on overcoming mental burnout. That might have been more like 50 cents or $1, but that's it, Joy. Okay? And I appreciate you and the entire Westmont crew. Shout out to Robin and the whole crew who is holding down Westmont, Illinois, making it an amazing place for you. And I hope to come see you guys soon. All right. We're moving on to the second question today, which is from Danielle in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. Danielle, thank you for emailing in. If you'd like to email in, it's podcast@burnbootcamp.com. And she asks, what connection do you see between physical fitness and spiritual connection? Okay, by the question that you're asking, Danielle, I can tell that you're in a place in your life in which you are starting to see the 8 pieces of the pie connect, the 8 categories that we always talk about: body, mind, emotions, spirit. Those are the 4 inner world elements of your life. Those are the 4 categories that make up the inner world, or you, things you can control, the controllables. And then you have the other 4, the non-controllables, the outer world, relationships, time, work, money. Okay, you add these 4 and 4 things together, you get a category hierarchy of 8 things, 8 categories. And spirituality arguably being one that most of us need to work on the most, and body, right? So when I took a survey and scanned, I didn't do like a formal survey, I'm talking about like an observational survey. When I do my observational surveys and I'm scanning all of our members, I've been to hundreds of locations, trained thousands of camps, thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I'd have to be pretty clueless or just closing my eyes and not paying attention at all to not see the obvious patterns that begin to emerge when we look at, let's just call it Burn Nation's membership base as a whole, okay? Which we are well into the 130,000s by now. Okay, and that's active members. So I would have to be absolutely blind to see that out of the 8 categories, it's the body piece and the spiritual piece. Those 2 are the hardest ones to be consistent with. Okay, and I believe I know the answer as to why. Because body, anchored obviously like by your fitness, but this also like covers nutrition and recovery, right? It's a very difficult thing to do. People do it in sprints. They do it in periods. They do it for like little gigs, little periods of time. Stop and start, stop and start. That's why I wrote a book in August 2018 called Stop Starting Over. Because I saw a pattern of we would stop, we'd start, and then we'd stop. We'd start, and then we'd stop. And then we'd start, and then we'd stop. We do the same thing with our spiritual growth. It is very hard to stay consistent and to grow in these 2 areas of life, okay? So I think, Danielle, when you ask the question, do you see a connection between physical and spiritual growth? If so, how so? I believe that fitness and spirituality are so deeply connected that you actually, if you're looking out for the connections of one to the other, it is so obvious. I'm going to go through some of these right now that you'll instantly make the connections and you'll never see the world the same again. And you'll start to see that, hey, when I focus deeper on my connection to things bigger than me, outside of myself, this spiritual ideology, right? If I connect myself to something bigger, okay, well then also what I'm doing is playing the long game, the same game that I'm playing when I'm in it for the right reasons in fitness. And so if you needed a connection, fitness and spirituality both exist so that you have a maximized quality of life, that your experience of life is one in which is aligned to longevity so that you can create more memories for you and your family or something like that, okay? Now, that's like the philosophical connection. Let's go to the actual connection points between body, the physical fitness and spiritual fitness, okay? So number one for me is just the the way that both of these are connected is the discipline that arises from the goal of mastering. So if I'm gonna, let's just say, a master spirituality, or I'm gonna master fitness, or I'm gonna, do 10,000 hours of it. Let's just say strength training, conditioning, consistency in the gym. It kind of mirrors that consistency for, a consistent practice of spiritual growth. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about meditation. I'm talking about it all. Okay, all of it, whatever it means to you. To me, is a connection to a higher universal power. Okay, I'm not here to tell you what to believe, but I think no matter what you believe, it's something to do with a higher universal power. So it's mastery. Listen, I'm a Christian. I call my universal higher power God. We'll just get that clear out of the way in case y'all are wondering. But I'm also not going to judge what your universal higher power is. But I believe that you have to have one. You got to have something that's bigger than you. My personal belief is that if you don't, then what is there to live for outside of this physical existence? What is it that we're excited about? What is it inspiring? Why leave this world better than when we left it if it isn't for something bigger than ourselves? So master over our body in this regard, mastery over our body and mastery over our spirituality. Both of these things combined, you combine them together, equals 1 + 1 equals mastery of your emotions and of your mind, or at least a foundation for that, okay? You're connected to yourself through fitness. You're connected to your to something higher than yourself through spirituality, okay? And I think that gives you just a really solid foundation for other people to start to connect with you. Mental clarity and focus. Exercise is going to boost your endorphins. It's going to reduce stress. It's going to lead to a clear focus, right? And a strong, clear mind enhances your ability for prayer, for meditation, for self-reflection. Overcoming resistance, I think, is another key interaction. These two pieces come together. Like the physical training piece teaches you to, I would say, like embrace discomfort through adversity. Spiritual growth often is like the inner resistance. Like you have to overcoming like your doubts and your old negative like belief systems and your patterns and things like this. And probably more so than anything is that your body is a vessel, right? And if you in spiritual like the connection spiritually is like, hey, I am so thankful for this body. I have gratitude for this body that I'm in, and therefore, to connect with something bigger than myself, than proper nutrition and movement and recovery, optimize the body's ability for greater spiritual awareness, because so many of these traditions kind of emphasize, how would you say, like treating the body like a temple. So if your body is this vessel and you really believe that inherently is spiritual. I think spirituality has a lot to do with breathing and the energy flow in your body, and fitness. Breath work and fitness is just as important. And if you're constantly aware of your breathing, conscious breathing, it connects the mind, it connects the body, it connects the spirit. And spirituality inherently is the mind-body connection. Like when you are congruent mentally, emotionally, physically, when you do have that congruency, it's much easier to connect to something bigger than yourself, because you're already connected with you. You can't connect with something bigger or with other people until you're first connected with yourself. I mean, I could keep going like on and on and on in terms of how I think about it. But I think overall, the last one would be like probably just like a ritual and a consistency. Like how do you, the more you're going to create a ritual in one area of your life, the more propensity you're going to have to follow up with a ritual in another area of your life. I'll tell you, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. But I'm also going to say that, I'm not somebody who, I speak to a higher power more through meditation and through asking questions than I do like a traditional form of like prayer. And so, whatever you do is really important that you don't isolate spirituality, that you don't isolate your body, that you don't isolate mental capacity, emotional capacity, relationship, time, work, money. Like, these conversations need to all happen congruently, harmoniously with one another. You don't want to be, let's just say, the person who is ultra spiritual, but is so spiritual that that you aren't present with your children in the moment, because your spirituality in abstract has taken you out of physical presence. Or you don't want to be the person who is so focused on that relationship with your children that you forget that this thing called work, which is the root of your passion. You need to do something for your work, something for your passion, because life can't just be only about having 4 kids and putting their priorities well ahead of your own all the time. You've been there before. You know somebody who's been there. That's not a life that's fulfilled and one that has lived at its highest potential, right? It is following a passion so that you can have energy for yourself, so that you can fill up the cups of those around you, in this case, those 4 children. And so those 8 pieces of the pie that I always talk about, it's harmony is the outcome. It's harmony. It's not any type of work-life balance. That's a bad way to put it. You ask the wrong questions, you're going to get the wrong answers. It's not how do I have work-life balance. It's how do I have congruency? How do I achieve harmony? And how does my mind, my body, my emotions, my spirituality, my relationships with myself, with my parents, with my friends, with my kids, with my colleagues, with my neighbors, how do those relationships manifest into my time for myself? How do I fit my workouts in there, right? How does my body, my work and my money and my time, like, do you see what I'm saying? All of this stuff they all have to have a story that intersects in this Venn diagram fashion with one another. And if you ever see the chart that I draw out for this, it's like a pinwheel. Do we have one of those? Do we have a Burn lifestyle chart anywhere? It's a pinwheel. If you can find one that's just a Burn lifestyle, like it's like a super simple pinwheel, and in the middle is the Burn B logo, and it's just like, hey, well, in the middle, the Burn lifestyle is where all of these things meet in the middle. Right? It's a simple pie chart. 8 pieces of the pie. They all meet in the middle. Not any one piece can be isolated by itself. And every single day, we have to have a ritual. We have to have a habit, a discipline, a routine that leans into something in each one of these areas of life that is going to have a positive benefit. Now, my question for you is, my friends, which area of life do you need to work on the most? Where's your audit? Have you done an audit? Can you go in your body? Can you say, hey, how are my workouts? How's my eating? How's my nutrition? Somebody asked me a long time ago in business, there's 2 important questions in business. Number 1, what business are you in? Number 2, how's business? Those are the only 2 questions you need to know. Okay, so take that and paste that into what I'm talking about. Number 1, what's going on with your body? Okay, what is it? And how's it going? How's your spirituality going? How's your mindset going? How's your emotional intelligence going? How are your relationships? How are your time? And how's your time being spent? How is your work being spent? How is your money being spent? Etc. Right? How is it going in these things for you? That's what I want you to take away from today's session with me. How are these things going in these areas of life? Could I give myself a simple 1 through 10? Can I start there? Just write down on a piece of paper: body, mind, emotion, spirit, relationship, time, work, money. How you doing? 1 through 10. And if there's any areas that are below 6 out of 10, areas that might be suffering a little bit, do I have a ritual that every day that's empowering, that is consistent, that is actual ritual? Like, I do it every day and it's empowering to me? Or do I need to work on this area? Okay, and if you're getting a below 5 or 6 out of 10, you probably don't have a ritual. And we need to start looking at, okay, what daily habit can I put in place so that this area of my life gets a positive input every day? All 8 of those areas need to have Constant, everyday, focus, time, attention, energy, and effort. And my last question of the day, and then we're going to be out of here. Okay, this is going to be a quick one because the majority of that of today's session was Danielle's question. Thank you, Danielle, from Coon Rapids, for asking that question around spirituality and fitness so I could dive into the Burn lifestyle a little bit deeper for you all. But it's a great question to highlight the whole Burn lifestyle, and we'll continue to talk more about that. And Parker from Ankeny, Iowa asked the last question. This is a quick one, straightforward, but I think it's a very good one. It says, it asks rather, do you think there's such thing as too much fitness, and where would you draw the line? Is there such thing as too much fitness, DK? The answer to this, everyone, is absolutely. Okay? Absolutely. Parker, 100% the answer to your question. There is absolutely, unequivocally, no argument. There is such thing as too much working out. There's such thing as too much fitness. Well, of course there is, because there's such thing as too much of anything. I often talk a lot on the show about absolutism, that there's no such thing as like everything is bad or everything is good. It's usually the case that there is a little bit of truth in everything. Okay? Here's an easy way to think about it. There's such thing as water toxicity. So if I took water and I drank too much water too quickly, I could get what's called water toxicity, and I could actually die from water. The most essential part of a human is what? Water. We're like 70-something% made up of water. Okay? Okay, that doesn't convince you that there's too much fitness. Okay, how about this? There can also be too much oxygen. So water and oxygen. There can be too much oxygen. It's called hyperoxia. I think once the oxygen levels start getting above like 60 or 70%, somewhere in that range, is toxic. Could be bad for you. So people say there's no such thing as overtraining. There's just such thing as undereating, under-recovering, and undersleeping. That's wrong. No, there's 100% a thing as overtraining, okay? Let me put it this way. Burn athletes, okay? They are going into the Burn Athlete Finals coming here in October to Charlotte. They're going in knowing that no amount of bananas, no amount of foam rollers, no amount of sleep, no amount of cold baths, no amount of saunas, no amount of stretching can make their legs feel better on Championship Sunday after they just did an entire day of exercise, okay? This is an event where you're overtraining intentionally. You're overtraining intentionally because you're going to go compete to see if you can win, okay? Now, afterwards, for 4 straight days, they're going to let their body recover, and we're going to promote that, and they're going to be just fine, okay? But that isn't just an example of when people say there's no such thing as overtraining, just under-eating, under-recovering, and under-sleeping. Ask a burn athlete if they can just sleep off the first 3 burn athlete competitions at Championship Saturday and Sunday here as they go on their road to Charlotte and to become the ultimate burn athlete. It just doesn't happen, okay? So yes, there is such thing as too much fitness. Here's my recommendation. It's 3 times a week to 6 times a week, depending on the week, okay? You should never start at 3 and plan on staying at 3. You should start at 3, work your way up to 6, and then periods of time you might be working your way back to 3. Depends on where you're at. But I like to give ranges in my recommendation because I believe the fitness industry gives too rigid of advice, generally speaking. Like you'll hear people say like, you need to work out 5 days a week. You need to recover 2 days a week. You need to move every day. It's like, okay, sure. Yeah, okay. But then life punches you in the mouth and then, sweeps out your legs from underneath you. And now all of a sudden you can't be so rigid. And if you can't be so rigid, then you're off your 6-day-a-week regimen. Now you're breaking a promise to yourself. Is that creating more confidence or less confidence? I think any even the most confident people that break promises to themselves reduces that level of confidence that you might have. So if I could say 3 to 6 times a week, and you never miss that ever again, I think we're doing well. Okay, recover on your off days. Be smart about it. But yes, we should listen to our body. If you're sore your lower half, don't go train legs. If you're sore in your upper body and your chest, okay, don't go train. You don't need to train. Okay, you don't need to train. Too much fitness, you could draw the line there. Could you recover every day? Could you do something every day? Yes. You could also do too much recovery. You could foam roll to the point where you're bruised up. You don't want to. So there's too much of anything, okay? So everything is some balance of both things, right? It's crazy to think about, but, life is very, very simple. Absolutism is, there's very, very few things in this world that are absolute. Even the things that seem absolute, like the edge of the top of my computer. If you're watching this, you could see the edge of the top of your computer yourself. If I actually zoomed in, that's not a straight line. It might look absolutely straight, but it's not absolutely straight because I could zoom in all the way into the point where that was such a rigid line that it looked nothing like a straight line. Ice, like you might say, hey, nature doesn't even like straight lines. There's no such thing as absolutism in nature. Maybe like a ray of light is about the only thing that could come close to that. But even not perfectly straight because it will bend when it touches something. So, like ice. If you see ice that's frozen, go zoom in. It's porous. It's not straight. So there's no such thing as absolutism, guys. And, you can't just say do something every day. You can work out every day. There's such thing as too much fitness, okay? So let's make sure that we're recovering. Listen to your trainer. Have your focus meetings out there and make sure that you are recovering and taking recovery just as serious as you're taking your fitness, everybody. All right? Well, thank you, Parker, for that question from Ankney. And we appreciate you very, very much for being a part of the podcast today, as well as Danielle from Coon Rapids and Joy from Westmont. And if you'd like to be a part of the show, podcast@burnbootcamp.com. Chelsea will be here ready to bring your question right on to the show. And with that being said, leave us a review on Apple. That would be the best thing that you could do all day long if you wanted to make me happy. And I know you do. All right, guys, thanks. We appreciate you. 2 claps on 2. 1, 2.